Hi there, my name is Travis, and I wanted to talk about one of my favorite entheogens or plant medicines to work with. It's called Psilohuasca. A lot of people haven't heard of Psilohuasca. I think it's a pretty new combination, but basically what Psilohuasca is if you've heard of Ayahuasca before, there's usually two plants in the Ayahuasca vine, which has a couple different MAOIs in it. And there's also another plant called chacruna that has DMT in it. Well, this is taking a plant like the ayahuasca vine or another similar plant called Syrian Rue that also has similar MAOIs in it and combining it with the psilocybin mushroom to create Psilohuasca. So if you know how ayahuasca works, DMT on its own is not orally active. The ayahuasca vine has these MAOIs that have a subtle psychedelic effect on their own, but when you add the DMT containing plant, the ayahuasca becomes very powerful and the DMT becomes orally active at the same time. And so you get this very powerful synergistic effect with the two plants working together. So with the Psilohuasca, the goal is something similar. The psilocybin on its own is obviously orally active. You can eat psilocybin mushrooms and get a good effect already. And the Syrian Rue or ayahuasca vine, whichever you choose to work with, is also active on its own in large enough doses. But when you combine the two, something really unique and powerful happens. So the experience has a lot of similarities to a mushroom experience, but the Syrian Rue or ayahuasca vine adds another character and a deeper dimension to the psilocybin mushrooms and makes them a lot more powerful and changes their character a little bit. And at the same time, it also increases the duration of the experience. So instead of maybe a 5-hour mushroom experience, you might end up having closer to like a 10-hour Psilohuasca experience. And the experience is incredibly visionary, maybe one of the most visionary type experiences you could have. And at the same time, it adds a deeper physical and energetic sensation, and it's very introspective and emotional, and it's just kind of all levels of your senses and your thoughts get brought into this experience, and it's very powerful. So, for this experience, I've been experimenting a little bit with using the ayahuasca vine and using Syrian Rue. And so far, I prefer Syrian Rue, though I feel like I need to experiment a little bit more to really commit to either one of those plants. But right now, I like to use Syrian Rue with the psilocybin mushrooms. And there's different ways to combine them. I found about 3 grams of Syrian Rue is a pretty good amount to really empower the mushrooms. I've tried it with 2 grams and with 4 grams, and both of those work good as well. I found right now I like using about 3 grams to get a good effect. And with the amount of mushrooms you take, that's up to you and how strong you want the experience to be. Just know taking 2 grams of mushrooms with Syrian Rue is going to be like if you had taken 4 to 6 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. Depending how much Syrian Rue you're taking, it potentiates the psilocybin mushrooms quite a bit. So the experience gets a lot deeper. So you only really need a little bit of the mushrooms to go really deep. One nice thing about this is some people like to do really deep mushroom experiences where they're eating 8, 10, 12 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, and that can be quite a lot of psilocybin. Sometimes there's a bit of a body load when you're eating that much. And if you're taking the Syrian Rue, you could take 3 or 4 grams of psilocybin mushrooms and get a comparable effect, but it's a little easier on your body. The nice thing about Syrian Rue, it's legal to buy. You can order it online, and you can get it powdered too, which makes it super easy to work with. At that point, you can throw it in a smoothie. You can make a tea with it. You can make a tincture with it. An easy method is just putting it in capsules. You can get capsules. You might be able to fit close to a gram in there. Just take 3 little capsules. I like to wait about 45 minutes after taking the MAOI before you take the psilocybin mushrooms to get the best effect. And I prefer to do this in a ceremonial setting. I don't really use entheogens for recreation anymore, but I like to sit and pray with my medicine and do it somewhere where I can really focus on having a strong inward experience without too many distractions. So for me, that usually means either by myself or in a small private group where we're all focused on the same thing, like we're all here to do a ceremony. It could be pretty difficult if you're expecting to do a ceremony, your friend comes over expecting to have a good old time, and you're both on totally different pages and trying to do so totally, yeah, it'll get confusing. But if you're on the same page and everybody you're with wants to do a ceremony in a small group, it could be pretty nice. Just expect something very potent, and I like to take personal care to protect my space. So when I'm working with the Psilohuasca, there's two ways I like to work with it. One of those is sometimes I like to work at night, indoors in the dark. You could also do it at night around a fire, but I don't really do that as much. Um, but indoors in the dark, you get a very focused experience. It's very introspective and very visual. The darkness helps you bring out the visions a little bit more. And I'll usually just pick a comfortable spot where I can sit and lie down. And if I'm doing it indoors, I like to do some protection in the room. So I'll blow tobacco mapacho smoke around the room and sing some protection songs, some like Icaros. And I like to protect my space that way and do a really focused ceremony, kind of similar to a lot of traditional ayahuasca ceremonies. My favorite way to work with the Psilohuasca is to do ceremony in nature, especially in the forest. And that's usually my favorite way to work with just about any plant medicine or entheogen. So with that, after I'll take the Syrian Rue, take the mushrooms, go into the forest, and I like to do a lot of quiet, reflective time in the forest. I'll still, I might use some tobacco smoke, blow it on myself for protection. I'll still sing a protection song, and if in the moment I feel like there needs to be an Ikaro to work with some of the energies in the ceremony, I'll sing that. But when I'm not singing, I like to have a lot of quiet reflection time and just be in the forest and listen to the sounds of nature. And for me, mushrooms are amazing in the forest. Something special happens where the forest really comes to life, and the mushrooms help facilitate that for you. So to me, when I take mushrooms in the forest, and especially when I take Psilohuasca in the forest, the trees start talking to me, the earth starts talking to me, the clouds will have faces in them, and it becomes this very beautiful experience where the whole world, all this beautiful nature around you, starts conspiring to help you in your ceremony and teach you in different ways. And the part I like about that is you're not only working with the Psilohuasca at that point, you're also working with the medicine in the forest that you're participating in the ceremony in. So, by me, we have lots of cedar and maple trees. So, like, cedar and maple start talking to me. There's a lot of Devil's Club back here. So, Devil's Club starts talking to me. And I live on a mountain. So, the mountain starts speaking to me and coming to me in a very powerful, beautiful way. Um, so, I can maybe share some of the differences that I've experienced with Psilohuasca compared to mushrooms or compared to regular ayahuasca traditionally made. And I can also share some of the experiences, differences working with Caapi ayahuasca vine with Psilohuasca or doing the Syrian Rue Psilohuasca. So I mentioned before, um, compared to mushrooms, the Psilohuasca experience feels deeper, a little more physical, more visionary, and it lasts twice as long. Compared to ayahuasca, I would say for me it's a little bit more insightful and personal, and it's less physical for me than ayahuasca. With the Psilohuasca, I don't really purge. Um, it's more physical than mushrooms on their own, but a little less physical than traditional ayahuasca for me. And I find that I also prefer psilocybin to the DMT and ayahuasca quite a bit. The psilocybin feels more focused and personal and a little deeper to me than the DMT. Sometimes I feel like the DMT feels a little chaotic or a little impersonal sometimes. So I feel like I get more understanding and insight working with the Psilohuasca. Um, and I don't really do the ceremonies for enjoyment. I do it mostly for insight, personal development, growth, and healing. But I would also say the Psilohuasca for me is a little bit more enjoyable experience for what that's worth. So comparing the different plants you can work with, the Syrian Rue or the Ayahuasca Banisteriopsis Caapi vine, I felt like when I worked with Caapi, it was a little gentler and more nurturing feeling than Syrian Rue. And I felt like, I like I view this as a spiritual ceremony. I like to work with different spirits and guides when I'm in ceremony. I felt like the ayahuasca vine kind of would push me more towards working with plant spirits and connecting with plant spirits, like different plants I've dieted, like coca, ajo sacha, and cedar. But when I worked with Syrian Rue, I felt like it was a little stronger and a little more upfront, which I liked, a little more in your face, and I kind of liked the directness of the Syrian Rue. I also felt like Syrian Rue didn't push me to connect as much with the plant spirits or plants that I've dieted, but it really pushed me to connect with the land that I was on. And I also felt like there was something Middle Eastern about it, like sometimes I would even see Egyptian deities, which I'm not used to, or I felt like, so some of the cultures that worked with Syrian root traditionally were the ancient Egyptians, ancient Jews and Muslims, and just people in that region from the Middle East. And so I felt like there's a lot of that energy and a lot of connection to like spirits of the land, like mountain spirits, rock and earth spirits. And I felt like the Syrian Rue had this also a very galactic quality to it, especially with the mushrooms at least. There was something very galactic. Sometimes I have visions of like space and galaxies and planets and stars. So maybe it's just because that experience was a little bit more unique for me. I have a lot of experience working with ayahuasca in the past, and so maybe it's just something about Syrian Rue being newer, or part of my family comes from the Middle East, so maybe there's a connection there. Or maybe I just like the directness of it. I'm not sure, but so far I've been preferring the Syrian Rue. Um, and Psilohuasca for me has been a very powerful introspective and personal experience. And so for people who are looking for something a little bit deeper, maybe you're already experienced with a lot of plant medicines and entheogens, maybe you've worked with mushrooms a lot, and you feel like you want to push yourself a little bit more, maybe surprise yourself and challenge yourself with something new. I feel like Psilohuasca is something worth looking into. You can research a lot about it online, and I also write about it in my books and a little bit on my website. So if you want to find out any more information about working with Psilohuasca, or especially on how to set up a successful ceremony with Psilohuasca for yourself, I really recommend my book, The Plant Remedy. It has a lot of information on recipes and especially a lot of information on how to set up a successful, protected, and effective deep ceremony for yourself. And I wrote that book because when I first started learning with entheogens, I was learning a lot on my own for a long time before I was able to afford traveling to Peru and learning from my teachers. So I know a lot of other people can't afford to travel and are in a similar position to me, so I wrote this book as a source of information to help people get a little bit further on their own and not have to make as many mistakes going through trial and error as I did. So I hope you guys enjoyed this talk learning about Psilohuasca. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment or any comments, or if you want to share any of your personal experience and thoughts about Psilohuasca. I'd love to hear them. Thanks.